Today I'm addressing the safety of the car. I'm doing that with upgraded brake lines, upgraded brake pads, and replacing the rear strut brace with one that's got a more direct mount to the chassis. I'll talk more about that later. As you know, we've done some power upgrades, and any power upgrades mean we're carrying more speed and there's more speed to take off, and that is why we're upgrading the brakes. They're going to be getting hotter and we're going to be using more of the pad, so we've gone to a harder compound and a braided hose to stop that pedal travelling long and to keep it nice and firm even in those long braking zones. On my video where I changed the seats to bucket seats and installed the harnesses, Phil Evo 400 pointed out something very interesting, so thank you, Phil. What he noticed is that where my carbon fibre strut brace here attaches, it's not the most secure mounting point. Now it bolts onto these loops where the rear seats previously clicked into as they leant back, so it's not particularly direct to the chassis, and it's with these two bolts. So what we're going to do is mount more direct to the chassis down here in the boot. As Adam disrupts my filming, there he is, being nice and disruptive. Thank you. Step one is going to be remove the harnesses, remove the netting, which I'm going to try and reuse, and then fit the bar. Then later on we'll fit these EBC Bluestuff brake pads, which are Trackday pads, hard compound, and then later on the lines as well. So this is the new one. It's a Cusco brace and it is aluminium as opposed to carbon. This means that in an impact, side impact or whatever direction, this is more likely to bend than snap. And obviously if it snaps, the harnesses will just pass through it. They'll just be pulled through it and stop holding us safely in the car. So this is more likely to give us a strong connection to the chassis, so that's not going to budge, and then bend in the event of an impact and make sure the harnesses remain looped around the bar. So now we have to unwrap the harnesses and then of course re-wrap around the new bar, and we'll recheck all the distances and everything also, because the new bar sits a bit lower around here, so we need to redo all the measurements. So now I'm going to probably remove these because they don't need to stay, and then I have to pop some clips here and here on both sides to remove this inside lining and then attach directly to a mounting point. Now it's time to remove the trim, and there's 3 on each side that I need to sort of pop off with this tool. Okay, so we couldn't quite unclip those, so a bit of duct tape is in order, I think.
Who are these cowboys?
Yeah, absolute jokers. Oh, bloody hell. So here is the new Cusco one, and you can see everything is out of the back of the car, and we get an interesting look at some of the electrics back here. This is what it was mounted onto previously, that loop for the rear seats, which as you can see is welded on to the plate. So the plate is strong, but the weld isn't necessarily. So you can see now, and there is a left and right to this, that these 3 bolt holes go through those 2 directly into the chassis, and that one at the bottom again directly into the chassis, and then on the right there are 2 bolt holes for some reason, no idea why, which goes top and bottom all directly into the chassis. The manual says to leave these plates on and bolt these blue plates over the top. Now, we don't have rear seats, so we don't need this, and I thought, what's better than going semi-direct through that? Go direct into the chassis. So they have provided some spacers. Mount is now sitting nicely flush against both sides of the chassis with that big spacer on the right and 2 smaller spaces on the left. I've offered up the bar, it all sits nicely, and before anyone comments, yes, I'm going to go back and put washers on all of these and get the right length bolts, obviously, because I need long ones to go through that spacer. But here we have the most direct and most secure mounted one ever. Whoa, lovely. Now before I tackle the devastating job of cutting my carpet, I've got to do these 3 bolts up on this side and 2 on this side. So I've put the bar in temporarily to do that, and I'm going to do these up loosely to make sure the bar is sat comfortably so that I don't have to rip everything off again. So check the bar can fit in place, square on, flush, and then I will go do these, undo this and do the mats. So I've stuck masking tape on the side panel, and if you can see, I've done my marking, so I'm hoping that's going to be correct, and I'm going to use the same method on the other side. Masking tape, draw on and cut. The right side's finished, and that is the blue Cusco mount peeking through the side. Both sides are in, holes are cut out, and the 3 grommets are going to go back in each side. Then I'll put the bar back in and hope the car isn't bent. Now lift your hands. So I'm going to sit in the car, hands device on, and then I'm going to get my glamorous assistant. We're going to slide the buckle to where it will sit, which will be about there, and then I'll do the wrap and should be secure. So I'm going to make sure that the buckle is not going to hit my helmet, so I want that on the lower portion of the hands device. Make sure I've got enough excess to tighten it under the bar, and then we come through the bottom, and you want to make sure you're positioning the buckle where we said, that front edge back under, and then the last wrap is called the locking wrap, so that comes back over the buckle down into there, and that is what makes it secure. That's what means it's not going anywhere. And then with the excess I just roll it up and put a cable tie through, and then that will sit neatly underneath. So the old bar was affixed up here, and the new one is a bit lower, and that is actually better because coming down from your shoulders you want it to be, I believe it's a 20-degree angle below from your shoulders, so that it holds you in and down on your shoulders rather than just holding you there and then going off into the distance. So this is actually a more secure placement, safer into the chassis, aluminium bends and doesn't snap, and better angle, so all round much better setup. Boom, done. It's now time to do the brakes, and they are very simple. So it's just jack the car up, buzz all wheels off, then there's a few little clips. I'll show you that as I get into it, but it's pretty simple. But as the car is quite a bit lower now, I have to drive the car onto wooden blocks in order to get the jack underneath it. Here are the wooden blocks to lift the car up, and now my jack fits underneath. I'll show you all this later, and I'm also going to clean everything up while I have the opportunity. So 2 pins, top and bottom, need to come out. They're held in by this little wire. Now these pins pull out. There we go, 1 pin out the top. Now I've been able to do this by hand pulling it. This big metal plate sort of holds the pads in, so you flick it off the top there, and then this is all loose. Bottom one pulls out. Pull the pads out, should be fairly simple. Each one has a backing plate, this metal plate, which is for sort of stopping a bit of heat transfer. So these are the new pads and these are the old ones. As you can see, the new ones are a bit meatier, and because of that I'm going to need to push the piston back into the caliper. Check that wire isn't going anywhere, the pins are all flush. This has tension on it, that sort of holding plate. Boom. We're all done. It'll be the same on the other wheels and the rear. When you're done, leave the cap off in the engine bay of the brake fluid reservoir, and then you can pump the brake a couple of times to set the pads to the discs, and then do it back up, and again lots more pumping before your first journey. So here is the brake reservoir. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the car to get the servo activated and get everything as it would be, and then we're going to do a few pumps on the brake with the lid off. What you should see is this level reduce. Because I've pushed the pistons inwards, I've reduced the capacity at the caliper, so it's risen here. So that should drop down. So okay, give it a start. So So final upgrade on the brakes now is the brake lines, braided, and changing the brake fluid to a proper racing fluid. So although we've set the brake up now and it's all feeling firm, the whole system will be bled all over again. I'm back at Prestige Auto Technic to now do the full braided brake hoses and put in this Motul 660 racing brake fluid. So that should really stop any pedal travel, any softening, and make sure the fluid's not boiling, there's no air in the system, do a full bleed for the next track day. So the hose we're replacing is from this connection here onto this mounting point here and then down into the caliper and those points. So we're going to have to drain the whole system, and we're of course using all of this lovely Motul RBF 660 Racing .4 brake fluid and replacing all of the fluid, brand new system altogether really. Rears are in both sides and the fronts are pretty much the same principle. Just taken this one off the front and it comes down off this hose, loops back behind the KW suspension, and if you haven't seen that video, check it out, and then it comes into the back of the caliper. So we're just draining out this side, we'll connect up all the new hoses, then go for a bleed. This is what the new Goodridge brake hoses look like then. It's pretty much identical, it's fed through the same hole, goes to all the same places, but just steel braided to stop that expansion and stop the pedal travelling further than it should do under heavy heated braking. So we've changed all the hoses and done one round of bleeding around the car, and there is no air coming through at all. So we're just about to start round 2, so we're going to go around each caliper individually, check everything is done. We've got through about a litre of brake fluid and we think the system's about 400, but we don't actually know, there's no information online. So the process of bleeding it is I'm sat in the car and Atta at the caliper. So I will pump the brake pedal lots of times until it feels firm and its feel isn't changing, so it should go nice and hard, and then he will open the bleed nipple, the pedal will sink to the floor, and when it does so he will tighten it back up and then the system is sealed. So I've pushed some fluid out the end, and then when I can't push any more out he tightens it, and then I lift the pedal back up, which if the nipple was open, it would suck air back in, but it's closed, so it doesn't. And that is basically the process that you just repeat until bubbles stop coming out, which we've already done. And then we're going to do another round again just to really double check. So what do all of these changes feel like? Well, the harness bar feels the same, but I now know that in a crash it's not going to fracture or split, and it is truly secure as it is intended to be a harness bar. As for the brakes and temperature management, we'll see when it goes on a track, but the feeling initially is it's definitely got a bit more bite. The pedal feels a bit firmer in terms of when it's bitten, it doesn't keep traveling. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it so far, and I now know that I'm also in a safer car, so I can push even harder. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to see more content like this.